Hello everyone, my name is Rijal Ramdhani and I'm a PhD researcher at Responsive Natural Resources Governance Research Group at University of Eastern Finland. On these occasions, I'd like to deliver my presentations about conflict over tropical peat water sharing, shifting conflict into collaborative action. I'd like to divide my presentations into 5 parts. The first is introducing research sites and data collections, followed by an explanations about peat fires and conflict over peat water sharing. The third section is the timeline of the conflict resolutions, followed by introducing actors involved in the conflict resolutions. The last but not the least is the current situations in which the conflict has been turning into collaborative actions. To do the research, I went to the biosphere conservations of Kiam Siak Bukit Batu on Sumatra Island, Indonesia. If you see here, this is the black color is the core zones of the biosphere, about 100,000 hectares. This is the habitats of Sumatra tiger, elephant, crocodiles, and others. This picture is an example when I visited the core zones of the biosphere conservations in March 2020. It was quite dangerous to visit the area as this river is the habitat of the crocodile. My missions at the time was to see how the natural peatlands look like in the core zones of the biosphere. The green color is the buffer zones of the biosphere, which mostly occupied by timber and palm oil companies. And the last, the purple color, is the transition zones, where 10 villages exist around here. To do the research, I only focus to a village close to the Malacca Strait on the top corner on this map. Why I focus only to this village? Because of this answer. You can see on the PowerPoint is the trend of hotspots in the village. Between 2012 and 2015, the number of hotspots in the village was really high. For example, 2012, it was 180 hotspots. The peak of the hotspot was in 2014, more than 4,000. However, after 2016, the number of hotspots has been decreasing. The question is, what was and what has been happening in the village? To answer the questions, I did the fieldwork between 2016 and 2020. I did literature review and statistical review, living in the area, understand culture and social context, mapping the informant, interviewed 59 informant. I did also participatory observations, participating in their programs such as building canal blockings and also fighting with the peat fires. I did also GIS mapping and network analysis. One of the answers is peat fires has strong relations with conflict of peat water sharing in the village, mainly between timber company and villagers. According to Encyclopedia of Life Support System, under natural condition, the content of water in the tropical peatland exceeds 80%. However, due to the development of canals by the timber company in the buffer zones, The tropical peatland in the transition zones of the biosphere is woody dry. When the peatland is woody dry, it must anytime be easy to burn. Why the peatland in the transition zone is woody? It's due to the illegal logging done by villagers. They cut down the trees and sold the log to Malaysia, to their neighbor country. When I came the first time to the village and I did the interview, one of villagers said, "Why do you come here? Please tell your government in Java," he means the Indonesian central government, "we do not need research. What we want is that the timber company went out from our village. Before they came here, we used to use fires on our land utilization, but there was no fires. Pit fires came out since the company developed hundreds of canals in their concession." The second villager said, "Here, the timber company is the main problem. In the dry season, they close their canal gate, while in the rainy, they did the opposite. Consequently, our forests are dry between March and August, and flooding between September and January." The district officer also said, "I can say that the peatland in our district is drier and drier due to the canal development by companies, timber and palm oil. They help build large and long canals between 12 and 15 meters." One of local NGO activists also said many villages around the transition zones of the biosphere are drought in the dry season because they do not get enough water from the buffer zones, which is mostly occupied by timber and palm oil companies. The second NGO activist said company built canals also to carry out their logs and fresh fruit bunches to the Malacca Strait. I also did interview with a hydrologist from a local university from the Department of Civil Engineering, and he said, "From my point of view as a hydrologist, the characteristic of water flows naturally from the upstream into the downstream through the rivers or canals. In the case of Giam Siak Bukit Batu biosphere landscape, community forests and housing are situated in the downstream as the depth of the peatland between 3 and 6 meters. It means that it is possible for people to build their adaptive houses. In the upstream, the depth of the peatland can reach between 10 and 15 meters, which are mostly occupied by timber companies. Consequently, by building canals and with their advanced technology, company can manage their water table based on their business interests." And here it is, the map of timber company water table management. You can see here hundreds of blue lines, which are the canals built by the company. The functions of the canal is not only to manage the water table, but also to commute the logs to the river or to the Malacca Strait. I also did with the representative of timber company, and he said, "Our water management in the concessions area follows the government regulations. The water table should be 0 centimeter or plus, as our concession is in the pit zone. That is why in the dry season we close our canal blockings. If we sell our water to the downstream, we never know how many metric liters of water the villagers need. They, villagers, are not ready with the water infrastructure. If I may say, the government did less efforts for this infrastructure development. We have paid for our tax and profit sharing, and we could not help communities to normalize their canals, which many of them do not work. As you know, those areas are state forests and they illegally utilize the forest for palm oil. And the company representative also said we have a technology to calculate the rainfall and we can decide whether to open our canal gate or not, considering the growth of our acacia. To understand this conflict clearer, I also tried to figure out the conflict background. So here it is, the conflict background. Before 1998, all areas, buffer and transition zones of the landscape was virgin tropical peatland. However, up till 2000s, the Indonesian government gave a concession to the timber company to occupy the buffer zone. At the same time, villagers who has been living before the Indonesians independence, they did illegal logging due to the crisis. And they developed hundreds of canals. The company developed canal in the buffer zones in their concessions, while illegal loggers, they also developed canal in the transition zones to commute the logs to the Malacca Strait to sell their logs to Malaysia, the neighbor country. In 2007, between 2007 and 2009, the illegal loggers or villagers, they climb the forest in the transition zones as their own. And they plant palm oil trees in the situations where the tropical peatland was woody and dry. And then between 2012 and 2015, as the effect of the usage of fires on the land utilizations by local communities and the conditions of the peatland woody and dry, it was happening, the massive peatland fires between 2012 and 2015. The question is, can this conflict be transformed into collaborative actions? The answer is yes, but we shall discuss these topics when we have our group meeting discussion. That's it for me. Thank you very much and have a nice summer.